Hello and welcome to Southwest Quilters' first workshop on the website. We're going to be doing Full Circle, which is the quilt behind me that I made, and the inspiration for which was from this book called Circle Play by Rinola Pakusic, and I have her permission to teach it. It's a lovely book. If ever you were apprehensive about colour and balance and tone and using fabrics that won't go anywhere else, the ones that we get out of the cupboard and stroke and look at and then put back again because we're not sure where to use them, or if they're so lovely you don't want to cut them up into small pieces, this is the pattern to use. It's a very versatile pattern. You can make it into many sizes. The background blocks can be anything from 6 inches to 12 inches, and the circles as well can be any size from 4.5 up to 9. This is one of the patterns that you can make with it. This is for a 16-inch cushion. It's 4 8-inch blocks, and if you want to make it into a 20-inch cushion, you add a 2-inch border all the way round. For an 8-inch block, I use a 5.5-inch circle. The next size up you can do is a wall hanging. This is 6 8-inch blocks with a 2-inch border, which gives you a finished size of 28 inches by 20. If you want it slightly bigger, you can use 6 10-inch blocks with a 3-inch border, and this makes it 36 by 26 inches. Again, the placement of the pattern of the background gives you the secondary pattern. So the 2 middle blocks are made up of quarter square triangles, and the top and bottom row of blocks are made up of half square triangles. The next size up is a lap quilt. This is made up of 16 10-inch blocks and measures 40 inches square when finished. If you want to make it bigger, you just add a border. The 10-inch blocks, for the 10-inch blocks, I use a 7-inch circle. The quilt behind me is for a Super King size bed, and it's 49 12-inch blocks, and they have 9-inch circles on them. We can see the various patterns here. The background of this one is made up of quarter square triangles. This one, the background is made up of 2 half square triangles, and this one here is some of each. You've got 1 half square triangle and 2 quarters. So although you can draw out a pattern to work from if you want a secondary pattern in a precise place, but it's also very good as a scrap quilt, and you just use the fabric from your stash and you use it as it comes, just making some lights and some darks, and then you can put the pattern, lay the pattern out as you want to when you finished all the blocks, which is what I did with this quilt. I find that all patterns look very pleasing when they're finished, so there's no need to worry about it. It's a very versatile pattern. You can work by hand, or you can work by machine, or you can do some of each. I actually made all the blocks by hand. I used to take them away with me when we went on holiday in our caravan, and I sewed them all by hand and then put them together in strips on the sewing machine and then quilted it by hand as well. So a bit of each. if you're going to work by hand, you're going to need to make templates, and you need medium weight card for the templates, and I use cereal packets, good old recycling. This is for an 8-inch square, and it's for a 1/4 square triangle. So if you get your piece of card, you want it 8 inches square, and then you're going to cut it diagonally twice. The longest edge of the triangle is the outside edge of the square. So they're going to go together like that. Oops, like that. So that gives you half of your square. Now, when you've cut this, so this is your long edge, this is your 8-inch edge. You've cut it into 4, so you've got 4 triangles the same size as this. This is your outside edge of your square. This is your sewing line. If you're working by hand, this is your sewing line. So when you put this template down on your fabric and you draw around it, that is your sewing line. You then add your seam allowance, and it's quite all right to just cut it by eye, because you're going to be lining up that sewing line when you come to sew. The other thing to remember is that to get the best from your fabric, this longest line should be on the straight of the grain of the fabric. And if you're not sure what the straight of the grain is, it runs parallel with the selvage. So if you have a piece of material with a selvage on it and you give it a tug, it doesn't move. If you turn it round to the other side and you give it a tug, it stretches. So this is what we call the straight of the grain, and it gives the fabric stability. So usually in patchwork we always put the longest edge on the straight of the grain. There's always an exception to the rule though, and if you're making this as a scrap quilt and you want to use up your various scrappy bits of material, then if it's impossible to put it on the straight of the grain and the fabric is quite a loose weave, then I always reach for my can of spray starch. So do starch it, and then it will give you the stability you need when you're sewing your seams.